Some machines are just tools. Others become legends that define generations, reshape entire industries, and prove that sometimes one design gets everything so perfectly right that the world cannot stop buying it. Today, we are uncovering the story behind the best-selling tractor in history, a machine that conquered every continent, survived brutal competition, and built a legacy that still rolls across fields 7 decades later. This is the story of iron, innovation, and the tractor that changed farming forever. Chapter 1: The World That Needed a Revolution. By the end of the 1940s, global agriculture stood at a decisive crossroads, suspended between the muscle-powered methods of the past and the machine-driven future that was just beginning to emerge. For centuries, farming had been defined by sweat and stamina. Draft animals pulled plows, men swung scythes, families and hired hands labored from sunrise to sunset, bound by the limits of physical endurance and traditional tools that had not fundamentally changed since Roman times. Then came the Second World War, and with it, a radical shift in human expectations. Millions of farm boys went off to fight and came back changed. They had driven tanks, flown planes, operated complex machinery, and seen firsthand what mechanization could accomplish. They were not interested in returning to life behind a mule-drawn plow. They wanted progress, and they were ready to bring industrial logic home to the farm. By the way, if you are passionate about these stories of engineering, strength, and industrial heritage, here you will discover documentaries about legendary tractors, colossal machines, and the equipment that transformed agriculture, mining, and construction. Subscribe, and every week we will explore together how these machines changed the world and the way we work. Now let us continue with our story. At the same time, agricultural science was entering its own revolution. Hybrid corn varieties were shattering previous yield expectations. Fertilizers derived from wartime explosives were enriching soils like never before. Pesticides and herbicides promised control over nature itself. But all of these breakthroughs shared one critical need: mechanization. You could not sow hybrid seed fast enough by hand. You could not harvest massive yields with horse-drawn wagons. You could not realize the promise of modern agriculture using methods that had not changed in a century. Tractor manufacturers saw the opportunity, but they disagreed entirely on how to respond. In the United States, companies like John Deere, International Harvester, and Alice Chalmers followed a predictable path. They built bigger tractors with more horsepower, wider axles, larger frames, and massive engines that promised brute force above all else. These were machines that looked impressive and pulled hard, but often at the cost of wasted fuel, unstable balance, and difficult, sometimes dangerous operation. The logic was simple. If 20 horsepower was good, then 40 was better. The future, they believed, belonged to whoever could build the biggest tractor. But one Irish engineer, stubborn, brilliant, and obsessed with solving problems others ignored, had a different idea. His name was Harry Ferguson. And he did not want to build the biggest tractor. He wanted to build the smartest one. Ferguson had watched for years as farmers wrestled with machines that did not work with them. They worked against them. Implements attached with chains or drawbars pulled awkwardly, caused dangerous balance issues, and provided no control over how deep or evenly they worked. Worse, they killed operators with shocking frequency. If a plow hit a hidden rock or stump, the drawbar could act as a lever, flipping the tractor backward in an instant. Dozens of farmers died every year under overturned machines, crushed because the tool they trusted turned on them. Ferguson refused to accept that as normal. 1933. He patented the three-point hitch, a simple but revolutionary system that connected tractor and implement as a single integrated unit. Instead of dragging equipment behind the machine, Ferguson's design used two lower arms and one upper link to create a triangle of strength. Implements shared weight with the tractor, improving traction, eliminating balance issues, and making smaller tractors far more capable. But that was only the beginning. The true brilliance came from draft control, a hydraulic system that automatically adjusted the implement's working depth in real time based on soil resistance. Hit hard soil, the hydraulics would lift slightly. Reach softer ground, it would lower again. The system ensured consistent performance, reduced fuel use, and most importantly, prevented deadly flips. When an obstruction was hit, the implement lifted, not the tractor. Ferguson demonstrated his invention in dramatic fashion, often plowing straight uphill while other tractors watched from below. His small gray machine worked slopes that would have terrified conventional operators, and did so smoothly, safely, and efficiently. Farmers were astonished, but manufacturers remained skeptical. Ferguson's ideas were revolutionary, but he lacked the factories, finances, and distribution to scale up on his own. That changed in 1938. That year, Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, was looking for a way to revitalize his aging Fordson tractor line. He invited Ferguson to his Dearborn estate to demonstrate his invention. Ferguson plowed, lifted, reversed, and turned with impossible ease. Ford was impressed not just by the machine, but by the concept behind it. Right there on the grass outside Ford's house, the two men shook hands on a deal. There were no lawyers, no contracts, no written terms. Henry Ford promised to build tractors using Ferguson's system. Ferguson would receive royalties. That handshake would become the foundation of one of the most influential agricultural partnerships in history. The result was the Ford-Ferguson 9N, released in 1939. Compact, efficient, and priced at just $585. With 23 horsepower, a low-slung frame, and the Ferguson system, 3-point hitch, the 9N was unlike anything else on the market. It looked small next to the competition, but it worked smarter, not harder. During World War II, the 9N became a vital tool. It could be operated by women, teenagers, and older farmers. It sipped fuel when gasoline was rationed. It could be repaired in the barn with basic tools. And it worked every single day. By 1947, more than 300,000 Ford-Ferguson tractors had been built. Ferguson's system had proven itself not just as an idea, but as a reality. But the handshake had no legal teeth. And when Henry Ford died, everything changed. Chapter 2. The Handshake Agreement and the Bitter Divorce. In 1939, Ford introduced the Ford-Ferguson 9N, a compact, affordable tractor that revolutionized farming. Priced at just $585, it brought mechanization within reach of small and medium-sized farms. Built around Henry Ford's mass production prowess and Harry Ferguson's game-changing 3-point hitch system, the 9N was an immediate sensation. At just 2,500 pounds and 23 horsepower, the 9N looked small next to traditional American tractors. But Ferguson's hydraulic system made that modest power remarkably efficient. The 3-point hitch allowed implements to be mounted, lifted, and controlled with unprecedented ease, enabling one tractor to plow, cultivate, and mow all in a single day, with tool changes taking minutes instead of hours. During World War II, the Ford-Ferguson became essential. With much of the farm labor force drafted into military service, this compact tractor could be operated by women, teenagers, and older farmers alike. It was fuel-efficient, easy to maintain, and reliable at a time when repair shops were short on manpower and spare parts. More than 300,000 9N and 2N tractors were built between 1939 and 1947, introducing farmers across North America to Ferguson's vision of mechanized efficiency. But underneath the success was a flaw. There was no written contract. The Ford-Ferguson partnership was based on a handshake, no formal agreement, no royalties, no legal clarity. Henry Ford believed that a gentleman's word was enough. But when he died in 1947, his grandson Henry Ford II took over with a different mindset. Young Ford promptly terminated the Ferguson agreement, stopped paying royalties, and announced that Ford would continue building tractors using the three-point hitch without Ferguson. Ferguson was outraged. He sued Ford Motor Company in a landmark patent infringement case, demanding over $300 million in damages. But while the legal fight dragged on, Ferguson faced a bigger problem. He had no tractors to sell. He moved quickly. In England, Ferguson had already been producing a refined version of the Ford-Ferguson since 1946, the TE20 or Tractor England 20 horsepower. With the American agreement dissolved, he immediately scaled up production at the Banner Lane plant in Coventry and opened a massive new factory in Detroit in 1948. His goal? To compete directly against Ford on American soil. The result was the Ferguson TO30, Tractor Overseas 30 horsepower. This was everything Ferguson had learned from a decade of design refined to near perfection. It maintained the compact form and efficient layout of the 9N, but added more power, a better transmission, stronger hydraulics, and vastly improved build quality. Powered by the Continental Z134 engine, the TO30 produced roughly 30 horsepower and ran more efficiently than anything Ferguson had built before. Ferguson's dealer network expanded rapidly, and so did production. Farmers who had loved their 9Ns discovered that the TO30 was even better. By the time Ford settled the lawsuit in 1952 for $9.25 million, Ferguson had already won where it mattered, on the farm. He proved that quality, design, and engineering could overcome even Ford's global brand power. Farmers chose Ferguson not out of loyalty, but because the TO30 was a better machine. But Harry Ferguson, now in his late 60s, knew he could not run a global manufacturing empire alone. He needed a partner, not just a financier, but someone who shared his belief that tractors should be built to last. He found that partner in Massey Harris, the Canadian company with a century of manufacturing excellence and a reputation for rugged, dependable equipment. Together, they would create something even greater, a global force in agricultural machinery, but it all started with a handshake that changed farming forever. Chapter 3: The merger that created a global giant. On August 12, 1953, Harry Ferguson Limited merged with Massey Harris Limited to create Massey Harris Ferguson, soon simplified to Massey Ferguson. This was not just a business transaction between competitors consolidating market share. It was the fusion of two agricultural dynasties with complementary strengths and shared values about what tractors should be, how they should perform, and who they should serve. Massey Harris brought over a century of manufacturing excellence dating back to 1847 when Daniel Massey began building agricultural implements in Newcastle, Ontario. The company had earned its reputation by building equipment that survived brutal seasons without breaking down, machines that farmers could depend on absolutely. Their tractors were known for rugged construction, powerful engines, and the kind of reliability that made the Massey name trusted across 2 continents. They had extensive dealer networks throughout North America, large, powerful tractors perfect for big operations, and manufacturing facilities with capacity to produce equipment at scale. Ferguson contributed revolutionary hydraulic technology that was rapidly becoming the industry standard. Compact, efficient designs ideal for smaller farms and international markets. Global distribution, reaching continents Massey Harris barely served. And most importantly, the Ferguson system 3-point hitch that had proven its superiority so decisively that every tractor manufacturer worldwide was scrambling to copy it. Ferguson brought European manufacturing expertise, established presence in markets Massey Harris had never penetrated effectively, and a brand identity associated with innovation and engineering excellence. The merged company immediately became one of the world's three largest agricultural equipment manufacturers alongside John Deere and International Harvester, with production facilities in North America, Europe, and beyond. The iconic red and gray color scheme emerged from this union, blending Massey's traditional bright red with Ferguson's practical gray. A visual symbol of two legacies creating something neither could have built alone. The new Massey Ferguson could offer farmers everything from small utility tractors for specialty operations to massive machines for industrial-scale agriculture. From Ferguson's lightweight efficiency to Massey's heavy-duty power. From compact versatility to specialized capability. Harry Ferguson himself was skeptical about corporate mergers and stepped back from daily operations. But he recognized that Massey Harris shared his commitment to quality and would honor the Ferguson system legacy properly. By the way, if you are interested in understanding how great machines were born, the industrial brands that dominated their era, and the technology that drove progress, this channel offers real stories every week that combine innovation, ambition, and mechanical power. Subscribe and discover the secrets behind the machines that moved the world. After this, we continue. The engineering teams from both companies began collaborating immediately on designs that would define the new Massey Ferguson identity. Tractors that combined the best elements of both heritages into machines that would dominate global markets for decades. The first products from the merged company retained both brand identities during a transition period, with some models badged Massey Harris Ferguson to reassure loyal customers that their trusted brands were not disappearing entirely. Dealers needed time to adjust their inventories, update their signage, and explain to customers that this merger strengthened rather than diluted the brands they had trusted for generations. Farmers who had sworn loyalty to one name or the other watched cautiously, ready to judge the new company by its products rather than its promises. But engineers were already working on something that would silence all skepticism and prove the merger had created something genuinely superior to what either company could have achieved independently. In 1955, just 2 years after the merger, design work began on a tractor that would become the company's signature model, the most successful machine in Massey Ferguson history, and ultimately the best-selling tractor ever built anywhere in the world. The development team had a clear mandate: create a utility tractor that combined Ferguson's hydraulic brilliance with Massey's manufacturing excellence. That could work efficiently on small farms and handle serious tasks on larger operations. That would be simple enough for new operators, yet capable enough for experienced farmers. And that could be manufactured affordably while maintaining quality that would ensure decades of reliable service. The engineers studied everything both companies had learned about tractor design, agricultural requirements worldwide, farmer preferences across different markets, and manufacturing techniques that balanced cost control with quality. They tested prototypes in conditions ranging from Canadian prairies to English farms, from American corn belts to Australian cattle stations. They listened to dealer feedback about what farmers actually needed rather than what marketing departments thought would sell impressively. And in 1957, they unveiled the result: the Massey Ferguson 35, a tractor so perfectly conceived and expertly executed that it would redefine what utility tractors could be and set sales records that still stand nearly 7 decades later. Chapter 4. Engineering Perfection in Red and Gray. The Massey Ferguson 35 emerged from a design philosophy rooted in practicality, reliability, and real-world versatility. It was not built to win horsepower contests or impress buyers with flashy features that performed well in sales brochures but failed in the field. It was built for farmers who needed a tractor that started every morning, pulled reliably through heavy soil, ran all day without complaint, and would still be working when their grandchildren took over. Its success did not come from chasing specs. It came from understanding what farmers actually needed. At the heart of most MF-35s was the Perkins 3A 152 diesel engine, a three-cylinder, 152 cubic inch power plant that produced around 35 to 37 horsepower, depending on configuration and market. Modest by comparison to some American tractors of the era, perhaps. But the Perkins diesel delivered something more important than peak horsepower: low-end torque. It pulled strongly without bogging down or needing constant gear changes thanks to its torque-rich character at low revolutions per minute. The three-cylinder layout was inherently simple, with fewer moving parts, easier maintenance, and legendary reliability. Cold starts were handled by an indirect injection system paired with a thermostat element, which gave the 35 an edge on frosty mornings when gasoline engines struggled. With proper technique, a cracked throttle, a few seconds on the thermostat, the Perkins would catch and run, even when temperatures dropped below zero. And once running, it sipped fuel. Diesel efficiency meant lower operating costs, consistent performance, and incredible longevity. Engines with 10,000 hours or more between rebuilds were common. Some are still running today, untouched internally, still starting and working like they did 50 years ago. In North America, where gasoline infrastructure was dominant, the 35 was also available with Continental Z134 or Z145 gas engines, offering similar output and reliability. This flexibility let farmers choose the configuration that suited their region, fuel supply, and budget without sacrificing the Ferguson system advantages. The transmission offered 6 forward speeds and 2 reverse gears. The ratios were well spaced, low enough for heavy pulling, high enough for road transport. The clutch was forgiving, the gear changes intuitive, and the gearbox durable under long-term use. This was not a transmission that required expert finesse or constant babying. It just worked. But the 35's true breakthrough was its integration of the Ferguson system 3-point hitch, by then perfected. The gear-driven hydraulic pump ensured consistent oil flow. The draft control system automatically adjusted implement depth based on soil resistance, helping farmers maintain even working depth without constant manual correction. Lift capacity matched the tractor's size, and geometry ensured balanced handling. No front-end lift when heavy implements were raised, no instability in transport. The compact footprint made the MF-35 ideal for operations with tight turns, small paddocks, and narrow headlands. It fit perfectly into European fields, dairy barns, and vegetable plots. The narrow front axle straddled crop rows for cultivation, while the turning radius let it maneuver easily where larger machines struggled. Despite its size, the 35 was no lightweight. The rear axle, transmission housing, and frame castings were built to endure serious field work. The sheet metal was thick, resisting rust and dents. English-built models had superior paint and rust-proofing, adding to longevity. These tractors were not hobbyist novelties. They were tools built to professional standards. Operator comfort was thoughtfully addressed. The seat gave clear visibility in both directions. Controls fell naturally to hand. The ride was firm enough to feel the ground and react, yet cushioned enough to prevent fatigue. These small details added up during 12-hour days, reducing strain and helping farmers work longer, safer, and more effectively. The MF-35 was not revolutionary in one big way. It was brilliant in dozens of small ones. It made farming easier, more efficient, and more sustainable. And that is why decades later, the 35 is still doing what it was built to do: working. Chapter 5: Global Domination Through Smart Manufacturing. What made the MF-35 the best-selling tractor in history was not just excellent design, it was Massey Ferguson's brilliant global manufacturing and distribution strategy that put 35s in the hands of farmers on literally every inhabited continent, adapted to local conditions, preferences, and agricultural practices that varied enormously across different regions and farming traditions. Production began in 1957 at multiple facilities simultaneously, ensuring global availability from day one rather than the typical pattern of building initially for home markets, then gradually expanding internationally. The Banner Lane plant in Coventry, England, served European and Commonwealth markets, building thousands of 35s monthly with right-hand drive configurations and specifications tailored for European farming conditions. The Detroit factory produced tractors for North America with left-hand drive and gasoline engine options American farmers preferred. Additional production, facilities in France and later other locations ensured supply could meet demand worldwide without shipping costs, making the tractors prohibitively expensive in distant markets. But Massey Ferguson did not just export one universal design with minor modifications. They studied regional farming practices scientifically and adapted the 35 to meet specific local needs that competitors often ignored or dismissed as too costly to accommodate. In rice-growing regions of Asia, they built versions with narrower tires and modified weight distribution for wet paddy conditions where conventional tractors sank uselessly into mud. In hot, dusty Middle Eastern and African markets, they improved air filtration systems and used heat-resistant components to survive temperatures that would destroy tractors designed for temperate climates. In mountainous regions of Europe and South America, they offered low center of gravity configurations for hillside work, where stability mattered more than ground clearance. In North America, they emphasized versatility for diversified farms growing multiple crops and needing one tractor to handle everything from plowing to mowing to light transport work. The 35 became the ultimate Swiss Army knife of tractors, available in dozens of configurations for hundreds of specific applications. Vineyard models had ultra-narrow profiles for working between grape rows that would stop wider tractors completely. Orchard versions featured low-profile designs to fit under fruit tree branches without damaging limbs or equipment. Industrial variants with different rear axles and tire options served construction and landscaping operations that needed tractor capability outside traditional agriculture. High-clearance models gave vegetable farmers the height needed to cultivate tall crops without damage. Standard tread versions suited wheat and grain operations where row crop capability was not necessary. Every variant maintained the core excellence of the design while adapting to specialized needs that would have been impossible to serve with a one-size-fits-all approach. Massey Ferguson's dealer network expansion kept pace with production capacity, ensuring farmers could get parts and service regardless of location. This was not accidental or fortunate timing. It was deliberate strategy, recognizing that selling tractors meant nothing if customers could not get them serviced when problems occurred or obtain parts when components eventually wore out. Dealers received excellent training on Ferguson system hydraulics, Perkins diesel maintenance, and proper service procedures that kept 35s running reliably. Parts availability was outstanding for the era, with distribution centers strategically located and stocked to supply even remote dealers quickly. This support infrastructure meant farmers could trust their 35s would be supported long-term, not abandoned like orphan models when manufacturers lost interest or shifted focus to newer designs. The pricing strategy was equally brilliant, positioning the 35 as genuinely affordable for small and medium operations while maintaining profit margins through volume production and efficient manufacturing. In 1957, an MF-35 sold for approximately $2,400 to $2,700 depending on configuration, significantly less than larger American tractors, but enough more than budget competitors to signal serious quality rather than cheap construction that would fail quickly. This pricing hit the sweet spot where farmers recognized they were getting exceptional value, not just inexpensive equipment that would cost more in repairs and downtime than they saved on purchase price. Marketing emphasized the 35's versatility and Ferguson's system advantages without making exaggerated claims that would disappoint buyers or create unrealistic expectations. Advertisements showed real farmers doing actual work, demonstrating how the three-point hitch made implement changes quick, how the hydraulic draft control reduced operator fatigue, how the fuel efficiency saved money daily. Demonstrations at farm shows let skeptical buyers operate the 35 themselves, discovering that compact dimensions did not mean limited capability, and that the Ferguson system advantages were real rather than marketing hype. Trade-in programs helped farmers transition from horses or older tractors to modern mechanization without impossible financial barriers that would have left them stuck with obsolete equipment. The combination of excellent design, global production capacity, regional adaptation, strong dealer support, smart pricing, and honest marketing created unstoppable momentum that competitors could not match. Even when they built comparable tractors, farmers talked to their neighbors about their 35s, and word-of-mouth recommendations carried more weight than any advertising campaign. Agricultural extension agents recommended the model enthusiastically because they saw the results in improved productivity and reduced operating costs. Used 35s retained value exceptionally well because everyone knew they were reliable, creating strong resale markets that made the initial purchase less financially risky. Within just a few years, the MF-35 had become the default choice for small to medium operations worldwide. The tractor farmers compared all competitors against. The machine that defined what a utility tractor should be, regardless of brand loyalty or regional preferences. Chapter 6. The tractor that refused to quit. Specifications and production numbers explain how the MF-35 conquered global markets, but they do not explain why generations of farmers kept these tractors running long after newer equipment became available. The MF-35 earned something no spec sheet can measure: trust. It was not the most powerful. It did not have the most features, but it started every morning. It ran in all weather. It finished every job. And over time, that consistency forged a relationship far deeper than machine and operator. It became a partner in the daily rhythm of farm life. One of the MF-35's most beloved features was its Perkins 3-cylinder diesel engine. Known for cold weather reliability, the gasoline tractors could not match. Thanks to its indirect injection design and thermostat system, the MF-35 could fire up on sub-zero mornings when nothing else would. Farmers learned the rhythm. Crack the throttle, heat the chamber, wait a moment, and the engine would catch even when the barn doors were frozen shut. Once running, the engine delivered smooth, steady power. It tolerated temperature extremes, operated efficiently, and often ran 10,000 to 20,000 hours before needing a major overhaul. Many units still in use today have original engines untouched internally after 50-plus years of daily labor. Maintenance was refreshingly simple. Oil changes needed no special tools. Valve adjustments followed clear procedures. Replacing filters or pumps was an afternoon job, not a dealership ordeal. Unlike modern tractors that bury service, points beneath layers of electronics and body panels, the 35 invited its owners to do the work themselves. Its transmission was just as robust. With a solid cast iron housing, high-grade steel gears, and careful attention to load-bearing tolerances, it resisted wear even under demanding conditions. failures were rare. So long as oil was changed and gears were not abused, most transmissions lasted for decades without issue. The Ferguson system hydraulics were a standout. The gear-driven pump was simple and durable, providing consistent lift and draft control for years. Lift cylinders, draft linkages, and control valves were easy to service and often ran trouble-free for thousands of hours. Farmers came to trust their hydraulics just as much as their engines. Precise, predictable, and strong, even the sheet metal and structural components were built with care. Thick gauge steel panels resisted dents and rust. English-built models, in particular, had superior paint and rust proofing. Frame rails were overbuilt, shrugging off stress and vibration that fractured lesser tractors over time. Many 35s, even those used daily, show little more than faded paint and torn seat covers, a testament to long-term durability. But mechanical excellence alone does not explain the 35's cult status. The MF-35 was pleasant to operate. Its compact footprint gave new users confidence without overwhelming them. Visibility was excellent, controls were intuitive, and the ergonomics simply worked. Operators could run these machines for long hours without exhaustion. Not because of suspension seats or computerized ride control, but because everything made sense. Everything fit. You could feel the soil change through the seat. Adjustments were mechanical and precise, not hidden behind digital menus. Nothing about the tractor tried to outsmart you. It worked with you, not against you. And over time, that built trust. Trust that it would start, that it would finish the job, that it would never quit until you did. Farmers remember their MF-35 not as just another machine, but as a reliable presence through decades of harvests, snowstorms, broken equipment, and long, hard days. And that is why the MF-35 remains not just in fields and sheds, but in stories, memories, and the collective heart of agriculture. Chapter 7: The Numbers That Built a Legacy. Between 1957 and 1965, more than 500,000 Massey Ferguson 35 tractors rolled off production lines in Coventry, Detroit, France, and elsewhere around the world. That production number alone places the 35 among the most successful tractors in history. But its influence stretches far beyond that initial run. Even after official production ended in primary markets, manufacturing continued internationally for decades, particularly in India, where the MF-35's core design remained unmatched for reliability, simplicity, and adaptability to local conditions. Though record-keeping varied between factories and regions, it is estimated that over 550,000 MF-35 units and direct derivatives were built worldwide. No other tractor model in history matches that number while retaining the same essential design, designation, and function throughout such a long production life. Other iconic tractors had impressive numbers, but not with the same consistency. The Ford 9N and 2N sold a combined 300,000 units, but across two models and under wartime conditions. John Deere's Model A and International Harvester's Farmall line sold in the millions, but with wide variations in design and purpose over time. The Fordson exceeded the MF-35 in raw production volume, but that total included generations of fundamentally different machines. By contrast, the MF-35 remained true to its core design, a compact, fuel-efficient utility tractor with a 3-cylinder Perkins diesel, Ferguson system hydraulics, and a 3-point hitch that became the industry standard. It was not just a popular tractor, it defined what a utility tractor was. The MF-35's success was global and genuine. Unlike wartime tractors driven by government demand, every sale of the 35 was made because a farmer in Africa, in South America, in Europe, or the United States compared it to competing machines and chose it as the best fit for their land, their crops, and their conditions. In competitive markets, Massey Ferguson captured 30 to 40% of total sales. And in many developing regions, their market share exceeded 50% with the 35 at the heart of that dominance. Before we finish, remember that we created this channel with one purpose in mind: to rescue the stories of heavy machinery that reveal how engineering, hard work, and industrial vision shaped our modern history. Because understanding these machines means understanding progress, human effort, and their impact on the world. Subscribe and become part of this community that loves to discover the secrets of the industrial past. Let us pick up from here. Its success was not just commercial, it was foundational. Revenue from 35 sales funded Massey Ferguson's expansion into new regions, research into successor models, and the establishment of dealer networks that strengthened the entire brand. The 35 scale enabled economies of production, lowering costs and improving profit margins across the company. It literally built the modern Massey Ferguson brand, not just as a product, but as a company. Its influence went even further. The three-point hitch perfected on the 35, based on Harry Ferguson's original invention, became a global standard still in use today. Category 1 implements sold in modern dealerships are designed to mount on tractors like the 35, meaning a tractor built in 1960 can still use equipment made in 2025. A 70-year span of compatibility that is nearly unheard of in mechanical history. Even electronic draft control systems on modern high-horsepower tractors trace their roots back to the hydraulic draft sensing developed and refined on the 35. Modern tractors from John Deere, Case IH, New Holland, and Kubota may be loaded with electronics, but their core implement attachment systems follow the template set by the 35. Perhaps most significantly, the MF35 proved that appropriate power, reliability, and efficiency mattered more than raw horsepower. It shaped the compact utility tractor segment that dominates the global market today. When Mahindra, Kubota, or other manufacturers design small diesel tractors for smallholders and lifestyle farmers, they are following in the tracks laid by the MF35. In an age of subscription-based diagnostics, expensive electronic controls, and short equipment lifespans, the MF35 remains proof that great engineering and honest design can outlast anything, including the companies that built them, the markets that shaped them, and even the decades they were born into. Chapter 8. The Legacy That Will Not Quit. Nearly 70 years after the first MF35 tractors rolled off the lines in Coventry and Detroit, these machines are still at work. Not as museum pieces, not as collectors' curiosities tucked in pristine garages, but as functioning tools, starting on cold mornings, pulling implements through tough ground, powering attachments, and performing daily labor on small farms across the globe. From Maine to Montana, Scotland to South Africa, New Zealand to Nepal, Argentina to Australia, the MF35 wakes up every morning ready to work. Whether it is mowing, plowing, running a sawmill, or loading hay, it handles jobs that do not require digital interfaces or six-figure investments. Just simple, absolute reliability that modern machines too often fail to deliver. The collector market for the MF35 has grown dramatically in recent decades, fueled by a generation reaching retirement age and seeking to preserve a piece of their farming youth. Many remember learning to drive on their father's MF35. Feeling the rhythmic thump of the Perkins diesel while perched on a lap, eyes barely clearing the steering wheel. Restored examples can fetch between $10,000 and $20,000, but interestingly, so can unrestored working models, because the utility value of a functional 35 still outweighs its age. What keeps these machines alive is not just nostalgia, it is infrastructure. Perkins engine parts remain in steady production, thanks to their use in everything from industrial generators to marine equipment. Transmission and hydraulic components can be sourced or rebuilt, and even sheet metal and electrical parts are available through aftermarket suppliers who recognize the size and dedication of the MF-35 community. The restoration world around these machines is vast and deeply knowledgeable. There are experts who can rebuild every component to exacting standards, often exceeding original factory specs while maintaining authenticity. Online forums, YouTube channels, and social media groups offer global support, meaning if something breaks in rural Texas or Northern Ireland, someone out there likely knows how to fix it. Public recognition of the MF-35's importance has grown as well. Agricultural museums feature them prominently. The Science Museum in London includes one in its permanent collection. At county fairs and vintage shows worldwide, MF-35s are not static displays. They plow, cultivate, and demonstrate exactly why they earned their reputation. Ask any farmer over 60 about the MF-35, and the stories flow easily. Tales of pulling stuck vehicles through blizzards, finishing harvests when newer machines broke down, or pushing snow after bigger tractors failed to start. These are not myths. They are memories rooted in reliability and reinforced by decades of performance. The MF-35's legacy is not defined by specs or records, but by trust. 500,000 farmers placed faith in a machine that never gave them reason to doubt. It did not boast the most horsepower or latest features, but it always showed up and got the job done when failure was not an option. In a world where equipment grows ever more complex, expensive, and disposable, the MF-35 remains a defiant outlier. A machine that proves good engineering and simple design can outperform hype and planned obsolescence. It stands not as a relic, but as a reminder of what machines were and what they still should be. From Irish workshops to 500,000 farms on every continent, from revolutionary hydraulics to decades of reliable service that refuses to end, the Massey Ferguson 35 did not just become the best-selling tractor in history through clever marketing or fortunate timing. It earned that status by proving that excellence and reliability create more lasting value than horsepower wars or feature lists. What is your 35 story? Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe if you love agricultural heritage that still works for a living. And remember, the best machines are not always the biggest or most powerful. Sometimes they are just the ones that never let you down.